want to welcome the members and guests. Our external auditors are here, and for a reason. It's great to be in Albany today. The weather's odd, but it's still beautiful. One of those days that you really appreciate the weather. It isn't raining yet. We've got a lot to cover today, and while I'm thinking of it, LC is here taking photographs.
LY,
I'm sorry. Taking photographs, and
we know him as LC.
So it's not necessarily candid, but just to be aware that you can take it.
No pictures, just food in the mouth.
For your information, the proposed adoption of the Maimonides Medical Center transactions has been postponed. We're going to have one executive session, and we'll get started. You have the minutes of the 8 May meeting. You've had a chance to review them. Are there any comments or corrections? Hearing none, may I have a motion, please, to approve?
Motion.
Thank you very much, Joe. Is there a second? Thank you very much, Val. All in favor, please indicate with aye.
Aye.
The minutes are approved and unanimously. Second item on the agenda is the Finance Committee report. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We met yesterday afternoon up at Albany. We adopted the meeting minutes from the May meeting of the Finance Committee. We then advanced and discussed the Rochester Institute of Technology offering, which is on today's agenda. After a brief discussion, we recommended that be approved at today's board meeting. We then discussed the TELP financing that you just mentioned for Montefiore. And we also had recommended that be adopted at today's board meeting. And once there's any questions or concerns, that concludes my report.
Chair, the next agenda item includes the resolutions to proceed with new financing.
Thank you and good morning. Behind tab 4 is the Rochester Institute of Technology transaction summary. Stephen Koser to present.
Morning, Steve.
Good morning.
The board is being asked to adopt a resolution to proceed for fixed and/or variable rate tax-exempt or taxable bond issue with a not to exceed amount of $230 million on behalf of the Rochester Institute of Technology. The Institute has been a DASNY client for over 50 years and has always met its obligations on time and in full. Approximately $150 million of the proposed bond issuance is expected to be used on new money projects, including the creation of an innovative maker and learning complex, a new student musical theater, renovations to student housing, and an updated athletic facility. Approximately $23 million of bond proceeds will be used to refinance a taxable bank loan, which was used for capital projects on the RITP. And approximately $57 million of bond proceeds will be used to refund all or a portion of the Institute's DASNY Series 2010 bonds, which is anticipated to result in net present value savings of approximately $6.4 million, or 11.4% of the bonds being refunded. The 2010 bonds are callable on July 1st, 2020. Therefore, the refunding will have a forward delivery. The refunding bonds are expected to price along with the bonds for the new money projects and the bank loan refinancing. However, the refunding bonds will close on or after April 3rd, 2020, when the issue qualifies as a current refunding. There will be no extensions of the final maturity of the bonds being refunded. Bonds are expected to have a Moody's rating of A1, and it is anticipated they will be a general obligation of the Institute. Enrollment has increased over the past 5 years, reaching an all-time high headcount of over 19,000 students in the fall of 2018. The mean SAT score for entering freshmen in 2018 was 1297, also an all-time high. Operating revenue is relatively diversified, with 52% of total operating revenue coming from net tuition and fees in 2018. Operating results have been positive in each of the past 5 years, averaging nearly $15 million increase in net assets from operations over the past 5 years. The Institute's net assets increased from $1.1 billion in 2014 to $1.4 billion in 2018, and the Institute's liquidity ratios all compare favorably to the DASNY medians. RIT's debt service coverage of 3.4 to 1 was 3.4 to 1 in 2018 and is projected to exceed 3 to 1 in the years following the issuance. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Steve. Are there questions or comments for Steve on this matter? Hearing none, may I have a motion, please, to approve? Yes. Tracy, thank you. Is it? Beryl, thank you very much. All in favor, please indicate with aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Behind tab 5 is Montefiore Medical Center transaction with Portia Lee presenting.
Thank you very much. So behind tab 5 is the telefinancing on behalf of Montefiore Medical Center. The amount not to exceed $32.98857 million. As you know, it's the policy of Public Authorities Control Board that financings which exceed $10 million in a 12-month period be brought before this board and ACB for their approval. There's an attached equipment list which details the equipment, which is largely medical imaging and other equipment. Mr. Chairman.
Portia, thank you very much.
The resolution appears at the very end of the proposed transaction. Are there any questions or questions? Hearing none, may I have a motion, please, to approve the resolution? Thank you, John. Thank you. Is there a second? Tracy, thank you. All in favor, please indicate with aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. The next agenda item is the audit committee report, because this is the annual review of the financial statements. I'm going to steal a little bit of John's thunder before he starts and say that we've got good news.
You do. The audit committee met yesterday, I will say that the attendance at the audit committee meeting is almost identical to the attendance at this meeting. So we're going to have some presentations, but not quite to the fulsome extent that we did yesterday. And with that, I will turn it over to Kim.
Before you do that, though, it was great to see so many members yesterday.
Yes, it was.
It was very important, the approval of the financial statements and all the other associated things. Thank you all for coming. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Al. Thank you, John. Good morning, everyone. Just would like to review a few of the significant items that are included in this year's financial statements and a high-level overview of DASNY's financial results for the year. KPMG will be issuing 2 unmodified opinions. One of those is on DASNY's financial statements, and the other is on the supplemental schedules that accompany the financial statements. The third opinion that they will issue is going to be the opinion this year. That opinion is that DASNY compliance with the state comptroller's investment guidelines and DASNY's internal investment policies and guidelines. The reason for the modification is the fact that DASNY's investment policy and guidelines calls for a maximum of 50% investment in any one institution. For most of the fiscal year, we did exceed that 50% with one of our trustees. It's important to note that we don't actually select the trustees in all of the cases. They are selected on a resolution by resolution basis, and for our private clients, the client selects the trustee, and on our public clients, that is driven by a low bid. It's also important to note that the driver for going over the 50% had to do with the state issuances last year. There were more sales tax issuances than PIT than we normally would have in a year, and those are split between 2 trustees. That resulted in a higher percentage going over to 1 trustee during the year. We did return back below the 50% level at 49% when we closed out the fiscal year. One additional item to note on that is that in terms of any risk, because all of the investments are held in book entry form, and they are held in either DASNY's name directly or in the trustee's name for the benefit of DASNY, there was no additional risk associated with those investments by virtue of having the excess of 50% investment in the 1 trustee. In terms of our financials, we implemented 1 new accounting pronouncement that I'd like to review with you during 2019. That's called GASB 75, and that relates to our post-retirement benefits other than pensions, and we call those OPEB. The new standard brings our accounting in line with our pension accounting, and it also brings it in line with private industry's accounting for similar benefits, and that the full liability of the projected total costs are now recorded on DASNY's books. Under the old rules, the OPEB expense that we reported each year had 2 components primarily. One related to those costs associated with the current year, and then the balance, looking at total projected costs, we were bringing those costs in evenly over a 30-year period. Because we typically contributed less than the expense, we were accumulating a liability on our books, and at the end of 2018, that liability was $138 million. When we adopted the new rules, the evaluation from our actuaries showed a liability for total projected costs at $183 million. Therefore, we needed to increase that liability by approximately $46 million. We had a corresponding reduction in our net financial position to open up the year, and we had no impact on the current year operations as a result of the new standard. In terms of our financial statements themselves, on our change in net financial position, you see that we had an increase of $89.2 million. The majority of that, or $88.1 million, was related to the restricted funds, and the balance of $1.1 million related to DASNY's operations. The majority of that was due to our annual adjustment to our OPEB expense, where we allocate between our public and private clients. When you take that into consideration, DASNY's underlying operations were essentially break-even for the year. Also included in your binders, you found our annual investment report. We are required to file that with the Office of the State Comptroller along with our financial statements. The report includes our investment policy and guidelines, summaries of our investment income earned and fees paid for the year, and a copy of our financials. We did not have any changes to the investment guidelines during the year. And if there are no questions, I will turn things over to Marie Zimmerman from KPMG to review the audit results.
Thank you, Kim. With me today, my name is Marie Zimmerman. I am the lead audit partner from KPMG, and with me is Jeff Coach. He is our senior manager and has been on this account for 11 years. As John had noted, we did meet with the audit committee yesterday to discuss the results of our audit. We performed our audit in accordance with US GAAP and the generally accepted government accounting standards. We will issue, as Kim had noted, an unmodified opinion, which is the best opinion you can obtain, over the basic financial statements, stating that they were presented fairly in all material respects. As Kim noted, with the implementation of GASB 75, the OPEB standard, we do have an emphasis of matter paragraph within our opinion, and it's just stating that we did have reviewed that implementation, and we had no modification to our opinion, but we are highlighting it to the users of the statements, given the impact on the statements this year. We did communicate yesterday our required communications to the audit committee and will provide a letter of those required communications. Within that letter, it stated that we had no corrected or uncorrected audit adjustments, we had no material weaknesses, and we had no significant deficiencies identified. It will also state that we had no disagreements with management or significant difficulties encountered in completing our audit. We do want to note that with having no significant deficiencies, that we will not be issuing a management letter, as we did communicate those items to the audit committee yesterday. We also will be reporting providing an opinion on the required supplementary information, which is the MD&A and the required, as well as the required supplementals for OPEB and pension standards. In addition, we'll be providing an in relation to opinion along with the supplementary information, and we'll be stating that it is provided, it is presented fairly in all material respects as it relates to the basic financials. And then lastly, as Kim had noted, we will be providing a report on the compliance requirement of Section 201.3 of Title II of the Official Compliance of Codes, Regulations, Rules and Regulations of the State of New York. We will issue a modified opinion as it relates to those investment activities, as Kim had noted, as for the one exception for the Dormitory Authority investment policy of going over the 50% threshold. As we presented to the board yesterday, or to the audit committee, and majority of the board members were there yesterday, that is the conclusion of our presentation today. Does anyone have any questions? Okay.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Yeah, thank you. May I go forward?
Yes, thank you.
All right. This is a point of the meeting where we ask the members to vote to approve the basic financial statements for the years ended March 31st, 2019. Okay, 2019. You've had a chance to review the financial statements and to ask questions of our external auditors, as well as we have our internal auditor here. Kathy's here. If there are other questions that you might have for her.
I note for the record that yesterday members of the committee did ask questions.
And lots of them.
And received answers there too.
Thank you. And is recommending, of course, that this board approve the committee.
Yes.
All right. There being no other questions or comments, may I have a motion, please, to approve the financial statements? Thank you very much, John. Is there a second? Thank you very much, John. All in favor, please indicate with aye.
Aye.
As there are none opposed, the motion carries unanimously. The annual financial statements are approved. Thank you all very much for being here. Yes, I know. I was looking at it. Thank you very much. It is necessary that the board approve the annual investment report for the fiscal year ending March 1, 2019. Heard comments about that before. Are there any questions about it? You've also had a chance to take a look at it. Hearing none, may I have a motion, please, to approve that? Darrell, thank you very much. Second, John, thank you. All in favor, please indicate with aye.
Aye.
As there are none opposed, the motion carries unanimously. Third, there's a resolution, the last resolution in this meeting. Joel has to give the report first. Okay. You commented yesterday on the Public Authorities Accountability Act for the audit. You want to add to that report? No. Okay. Then the members have had an opportunity to read the proposed Public Authorities Accountability Act annual report for the fiscal year ended March 31, 2019. Are there any questions about it? Hearing none, may I have a motion, please, to approve? George, thank you. Darrell, thank you. Second. All in favor, please indicate with aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. We move on to tab 7 and the report of the president.
Thank you. Good morning. CUNY, DASNY's largest partner, is increasingly relying on us to deliver, and DASNY is in the process of allocating additional resources to meet this challenge. We now have more than 300 active Kinney projects with a construction value of more than $1.5 billion. At SUNY, we have secured more than 20 new interior design projects at community colleges across New York State. We're pleased by the efforts our team in interior design and procurement have made over the last 2 years and really pushing this opportunity and identifying this relationship. We're also expanding our presence with New York State Office of Alcoholism and Substance Abuse Services and with people with developmental disabilities. DASNY also restarted its procurement for the $750 million New York State Life Sciences Public Health Laboratory in Albany that we are partnering with the Department of Health on. We are also pleased to announce that we're about to welcome DASNY's second set of fellows in our Public Finance Diversity Fellowship. Those two firms that we have partnered with this year, we go through a very exhaustive selection process that KPMG actually executes on our behalf. Have envelopes and pull names out of a hat, and it's kind of like the lottery. I never win, so it doesn't matter. And the two firms this year are Jeffries and Siebert Cisneros, and we're very excited to welcome our two new fellows who spent 6 months with us through a training process, and then will spend the additional 6 months with Jeffries and Siebert Cisneros, and hopefully could lead to future opportunities for them. We're very pleased to share with you that the inaugural class that brought to us Cassandra Tate and Dilshoda Kurbanova. So Cassandra is at RBC and Dilshoda is at Barclays. So that's in our inaugural class. They have been formally offered full-time jobs by both RBC and Barclays. They are exceptional talents and were recognized. I think the advantages of working with Portia, Matt, Craig, the rest of the public finance team, the legal team, as well as our finance teams, gave them probably a good leg up. They may not have been as deeply steeped in the numbers as some of their peers who go through all of the spreadsheets, but what they certainly brought was really an understanding of how markets operate and how these processes come together. So I'm very pleased with the success that we have had. I'm very pleased how the teams have welcomed, nurtured folks. Our human capital team, particularly Nicholas Olette, has been very front and center in terms of shepherding two very young people up here in the Albany, in the capital region. Because they come up here, they live here, and they work, and then they go back to their lives. So this has been an exceptional opportunity for two very talented young women, and we see an additional opportunity for a young man and a young woman who will be joining DASNY rather soon. So we'll introduce them to you as we did last year. But again, kudos to the DASNY team, and thank you to each of you for supporting this initiative. In the past month, DASNY and our healthcare clients closed on $33.3 million in tax-exempt equipment leasing transactions. United Health Services Hospital of Wilmington closed on a $10.1 million transaction. The transaction authorizes this essential healthcare provider to acquire state-of-the-art equipment that will enhance patient care, including a surgical robot, electrocardiographs, surgical instruments, and ventilators. Additionally, SUNY University Hospital at Syracuse closed on $23.2 million in a transaction. The transaction authorizes the hospital to acquire modern imaging and monitoring systems, another surgical robot, a neuro microscope, operating room tables, hospital beds, and other equipment. So again, TELP is being used for some very important purposes as healthcare institutions innovate and upgrade their technology. DASNY's summer work at the SUNY campuses across the state has begun yet again. This is a very important project to DASNY and certainly SUNY and our construction division. Over the summer months, our construction division will deliver 34 projects valued at approximately $61.2 million. This summer, we're also initiating more than $70 million in longer-term capital renovation projects on SUNY campuses statewide. Of particular note is a $16.6 million renovation at SUNY Plattsburgh's Kent Hall. This renovation will transform Kent Hall's traditional double occupancy rooms and shared hallway bathrooms into suite-style living areas with private bathrooms and shared living space, something students really like. Single occupancy bedrooms will also be available. A new full-service cafe will occupy the lower level and feature dining areas inside and outside along the Saranac River. We expect to complete this project in August 2020. On May 9th, we happily broke ground on construction of a $33.5 million 257-bed residence hall at SUNY Polytechnic Institute's Utica campus. And we were pleased to partner with Dr. Christina Johnson, the chair and head of SUNY, and really help advance this project and initiative. She's very excited. This is part of her capstone in terms of what she seeks to do across SUNY, and certainly is consistent with the governor's objectives on zero net energy reduction. The residence hall in particular will surpass existing energy codes and be constructed as a zero net energy ready. The building exterior and mechanical systems will be improved to make the building highly energy efficient, and infrastructure will be installed to allow the later integration of on-site renewable energy production systems. Once these energy production systems are installed, the building will use annually no more than the energy it can produce using on-site renewable resources. In other words, it will operate as a net zero carbon. DASNY will deliver the project using design build and expect to have the hall open by August 2020. In Western New York's region, DASNY's workload in construction has steadily increased, and we're very pleased by this. To encourage relationship building and foster new partnerships within the minority and women-owned business enterprise and service-disabled veteran-owned business enterprise communities, we hosted an outreach and networking event on May 23rd at the Rochester Institute of Technology. For those of you who may not recall, we made a determination a number of months ago with a lot of thought to take the team out of our upstate construction division and have a dedicated Western New York region, primarily because of the workload. And Rob Ryan is heading up that initiative and has worked on the city of Rockport, which was our first design build. So we're very excited by that team. And they're also working on one of the very important projects that Governor Cuomo has recently introduced in terms of the Rochester area, where he announced a $300 million commitment to the Rochester area due to flooding. So that team will be taking the lead on that. So we're very excited by the work that they're doing. But as it relates to this event, you know, we have been doing these events in Western New York for the last 3 years, and we had about 100 and something attendees. The idea here, again, is we want our partners, and we certainly want members of the local community to understand our upcoming projects and bid opportunities, particularly in Western New York, including the $30 million addition and renovation project for the State Office of Mental Health at Western New York Children's Psychiatric Center in Buffalo. Those eager to do business with DASNY learned about upcoming projects and bid opportunities in Western New York from our panel of experts. DASNY's Director of Communications and Marketing, Deborah Fasser, and her team were very instrumental in organizing this. They did a very good job on short notice. Deborah moderated the panel. The panel included Lou Sorelli, the former Director of Procurement, as well as Matt Moore, who is the current Director of Procurement, and Michael Clay, who is the co-head of the procurement organization with Matt Moore. Paul Koopman, Managing Director of Executive Initiatives, Kara Mallard, who is the Chief Professional Services Contracts, and Rob Ryan, the Director of Construction and Operations in New York. Excellent turnout, a lot of intellectual capital presented by the team, and really talking about how to work with us and how we are focused on our projects in Western New York. On May 16th, I also had the opportunity to participate in the Infra Day East Summit in New York City. It was a forum which brought together 300 infrastructure executives to discuss new opportunities and challenges facing the market. Again, this is an opportunity for us to highlight our role, responsibility as a frontline economic development institution that enables both financing and construction across the state. So we are very pleased to have a keynote opportunity to do that, certainly with our peers across the state, and that would be with Port Authority, the Empire State Development Corporation, the Thruway as well. Finally, consistent with the work that we had shared and updated you, that really had its genesis probably 4 years ago, but over the last 2 years had your input, and that's the One DASNY initiative. We brought in the bond councils, and we had an event in which Mike Cusack, Portia Lee, Ricardo Salomon, and other members of our team engaged our bond councils, so we had about 45 in our New York City office to explain how we're driving efficiencies in our process and our expectations of their role and responsibility in that. So we're very excited to have the opportunity to learn more about how we have advanced these initiatives. This is not new to them. We have been communicating with them informally over the last 2 years. The way we started this process was really working first and foremost with our clients to understand exactly what they expected of us, what they expected of all of their providers. Then we moved to our senior underwriters and focused on that, because those were the two drivers. Next, the financial advisors. And as we were engaging in this discussion and putting the processes together and working with you and working with Squire, we back-channeled and communicated with the legal community. So a lot of folks, this was not new. We felt it was very important to bring everyone together so that we can have a kumbaya moment and they understand what their role and responsibility is. So on the whole, it was an opportunity to close the loop. And Mike, maybe you want to say something very quickly about that?
Very quickly, the hallmark of the whole presentation is the changes to the financing guidelines for independent institutions that were approved last year by the board, and as Gerard mentioned, communicated out to the other project participants. And the bond council and tax council were very pleased to hear the results of all that effort, the rollout, and to hear that the results are starting to come in at DASNY. We're seeing health care clients we haven't seen in a while, and independent educational institutions we haven't seen in a while. They're starting to come back for DASNY, and they were very eager to indicate that their support with the approach that we're taking. Number one, both during the meeting and after the meeting, the number one comment is we're headed in the right direction, and number two, they can support this and will support this. So I think with that said, there's some, it's an ongoing process. We're not done it, but it was very, very well received.
I think the bottom line that came out of this, and I'll use something, I'll take a note from Portia. They are basically asking us and recognizing that we all have to thread a needle. And so balancing standardization with being opportunistic, right? So there are a number of institutions that are pushing against the standardization, and we recognize that we do not want to backdoor into processes that we have jettisoned, that we recognize they have worked for us when we were executing on behalf of moral obligation and general obligation. But as a conduit issuer for our independent higher education and healthcare clients, making sure that we thread that needle and balance that process is very important. And that's what the market-driven approach is. That's what we presented to you, and it's been favorably received. I'll turn it over to Portia. Portia, before I turn it over, if you want to add something,
No, I think you and Mike really covered it. It was really very, very, very well received, and probably the bookend to the meetings, as you had mentioned, that we started out with, having with the clients and the underwriters and financial advisors. So I think we sort of closed the loop with all the major participants.
Thank you.
Yep. So behind tab 8 are the standard public finance reports. Since the last board meeting, we priced and closed a building law transaction as well as a school district's transaction. A very brief market update. Total membership supply is about $153 billion. Year to date, that's about 1% higher than this time last year. The total supply for this week is a little bit higher than previous weeks, about 8.8 billion. U.S. government bonds are stronger overall as investors are digesting news about the European Central Bank perhaps cutting rates. Top-rated municipal bonds are slightly stronger with 1 basis point decreases at the kind of the far end of the curve. As we talked about at previous meetings, municipal bond funds have reported inflows. Week ending June 12th were inflows of over $778 million. This actually marks the 23rd consecutive week of inflows into the market. It's been really a very, very good time for issuers to be in the market. 1-year MMD has decreased by 23 basis points since the May board meeting, and 10 and 30-year MMD has also decreased 12 and 11 basis points since the May board meeting. So again, it's been a really very, very good time for issuers to be in the market. You also have behind tab 8 in a bond sale report resolution. Emailed to you in the supplemental mailing was the actual annual bond sale report. And there's also sort of a summary presentation, which you should have as well. So, the annual bond sale report goes through our financing activity for the last fiscal year, that's fiscal 18-19. Going through the presentation, on page 2, according to the bond buyer, DASNY was the #1 issuer for calendar year 2018. Page 3, we issued approximately $8.7 billion in the last fiscal year in 12 financings. Moving on to page 4, that $8.7 billion in financings is comprised of 6 financings totaling about $6.2 billion on behalf of our public clients, 6 financings totaling about $2.5 billion undertaken on behalf of private clients. Pages 5 through 9 just break down the numbers into further buckets: supported debt, other public debt, independent colleges and universities, healthcare, and other independent institutions. A few general takeaways, though. I would note that the school district transaction and the Montefiore transaction had the benefit of credit enhancement, which is used on a partial basis on both of those financings. We've seen that in the past with the school district financing. It was actually very interesting to see in the Montefiore transaction. It was really very, very helpful. And just interesting to note in terms of bond insurance in the healthcare space, also at the BBB level. But it was really very beneficial to the marketing because it in essence created sort of another bucket of bonds that had a little bit different characteristics for the investor base. While the number of private client financings was low, the dollar amount of those financings was really quite high. And it should also be noted that, as you'll recall, given the tax law change at the end of 2017, we had accelerated a number of transactions into December of 2017, which also I think had an impact on the last fiscal year numbers. Similarly, you'll see the numbers on page 10 in the presentation about TELF activity. There were 3 leases totaling about $22 million last year. And I would note that we also accelerated a number of TELF transactions at the end of 2017. Again, given what was happening as far as the overall changes in the tax law. I'd like to thank really all of the staff, public finance, portfolio monitoring, finance, and legal, for the work that they did in the last year, because the report and the compilation here really reflects their work. And they're the ones that are really, moving these transactions to market. And I'd also just like to note Lynn Richard and Sharon Pernack, who, do a tremendous amount of work just to put the reports together. So definitely my thanks to them. So there is a resolution.
It's a very brief resolution. It is attached to one page. I don't know if you've had a chance to take a look at it. It's this very, very short resolution. I'll read it to you. Be it resolved, member of the Dormitory Authority of State of New York, DASNY, that the DASNY annual bond sale report for the fiscal year ending March 31, 2019 is hereby approved. May I have a motion, please, to approve? Thank you, Darrell. John, thank you for the second. All in favor, please indicate with aye.
Aye.
Aye. Is there none opposed?
Just a couple of other small items included in the handouts on the table is a single approval pipeline report. Basically, to bring to the board's attention that we will be bringing the Americo financing to the board in July. So that's certainly good news. Northwell. Also included in the handouts is a swap report. As you'll recall, the board has requested that we provide that report to you annually with all the other reports that we provide in June, as opposed to giving you the report on a monthly basis. So that's included as well. I also just wanted to note for the members that we have issued a request for information, an RFI, for a lead underwriter and financial advisor in connection with a raise the age financing that we expect to undertake. The authority for us to undertake that financing is actually included in last year's budget. That's fiscal 18-19 budget, not the budget that just passed. This is March 31st. But in any event, so we're making our way through that process. We've not yet concluded it, but we will conclude it very shortly and hear more about that financing. The last thing that I wanted to mention is just another update on our DASNY outreach efforts. Since the last board meeting, we met with Hospital for Special Surgery. And one of the things that we did talk to them about was sort of the things that we've seen other healthcare institutions look at in terms of, what we're calling sort of the hybrid tax-exempt and taxable financings. Hospital for Special Surgery has been issuing corporate taxable away from us. Right now, given that the rates are fairly compressed between tax-exempt and taxable financings, that's the way that they think they're going to go in the future, but they said they would continue to monitor those rates, and as those rates widen out, they certainly will give some consideration to issuing some portion of bonds, tax-exempt as well as taxable, and coming back and issuing through us. We also talked to them about some of the construction services that the authority provides, because that's something that, again, under DASNY, we're trying to make our private clients aware that we have a menu of services here, and that's something that they did express an interest in. We provided some follow-up information, and we'll continue to keep in touch with them on that. And we'll continue to keep you posted on our DASNY outreach efforts. That concludes my report.
Portia, thank you.
I have a question. Aside from this Northwell expected financing, is this really the only thing on board for this summer as far as going out in the market?
So, we considered the RIT transaction this morning for resolution to proceed. I think our expectation is we would be bringing that back in July as well.
So just those two, maybe July, August?
So I think that's our expectation at this point for July. Not seeing anything. There are other things sort of in the pipeline, but I guess at this point we're not really seeing anything in terms of, are you asking about board meetings?
No,
or
I'm just asking about generally what the marketplace is going to look like and whether we're seeing a trend as far as, are things slowing down in the usual way it does during the summer? Or are we seeing just people waiting perhaps for the Fed, which is meeting this afternoon, to decide where it's going on interest rates? I'm just trying to get a sense of what, are people waiting? Entities?
Interestingly, I think we've seen very steady activity this year. Oftentimes we see kind of a lot of activity sort of in the early part of the calendar year. Right. This year I think it's been really very, very steady. So we are expecting to, we expect to see RIT, we expect to see Northwell here in July. We're actually taking bids on a PIT competitive transaction tomorrow. Fairly big, 1.6 billion. So that's sort of what we're seeing at this point. A very, very continual calendar for us.
Well, that actually sounds like it's good for the marketplace if it's just a predictable, continual flow of bonds going to the market.
You think you'll see some more refinancings, Portia?
Yeah, interesting question. I think given the fact that we were really pretty aggressive on the refunding front when we were able to do advance refundings, we've not seen a lot of refunding activity. That was clearly something that's, I think, referenced when you look at the activity from the last fiscal year, because we had captured so much when they were advance refundings that there really wasn't that much left in terms of current refunding activity. You heard from Steve this morning in terms of RIT, and they're undertaking a refunding on a forward delivery basis. So, yeah, as time passes, as we get further and further away from December 2017, when the tax law changed, there will be current fundings that will come into the money.
Thank you. There are no other questions or comments from Portia. Do you want to read this?
Yes.
I'm happy to do it. The board has asked, I believe, annually to approve the procurement report. The DASNY procurement contract annual report fiscal year ended March 31, 2019. There is a resolution for the approval. This is the report, Paul.
Correct.
Right. You've all had a chance to take a look at it. Paul's actually going to tell us about that.
Good morning.
Morning. Thank you for coming, Paul.
Sure. The 2018-19 procurement contract report is being presented to you for approval pursuant to the requirements of Section 2800 of the Public Authorities Law. DASNY is required to submit an annual report to the authority's budget office that includes procurement contract transactions that have an actual or estimated value at $5,000 or more. I'm going to touch on some of the highlights of the report. DASNY's procurement operations are a significant driver in our ability to provide value to our clients. Procurement touches projects at all phases, from design through construction, in many cases, furniture and equipment fit out. Day-to-day operations and execution of procurement transactions are managed through 4 units that reside in procurement: professional services contracts, construction contracts, job order contracts, and purchasing. In addition, standing side by side organizationally with the procurement group is the Opportunities Program Group to ensure that MWB participation is addressed in all phases of DASNY's procurement operations. The report reflects the significant number and dollar value of procurement transactions DASNY processes in a given year. For construction-related services, the procurement unit processed close to 2,700 transactions valued at over $462 million, including related professional service agreements, construction contracts, and purchase orders. This represents a 6% increase over last year's dollar value and an 11% increase in transaction volume from the prior year. In addition, there was a 15% increase in volume transaction to MWBEs. Procurements DASNY conducted and methods used to procure and execute the work also reflect the flexibility we bring to our clients in the delivery of projects. The transactions include alternative delivery procurements, including design, build, and CM at risk, expedited contracting methods like term consulting contracting and job order contracting, and other types of value-added procurement methods like pre-qualified single prime contracting. In addition, the procurement activity in the report supports a range of projects we do deliver on state initiatives, including energy efficiency projects like SUNY Nepali, design-build residence halls, and our energy performance contracting program, in addition to supporting building resiliency efforts through the GOZER program. In addition, we bring flexibility in CM at risk and design-build in all our methods. Not reported in the report, but still underway, are 2 significant efforts in the procurement area, including the New York State Life Sciences Initiative, which is its large-scale design-build project, as well as the SUNY Oneonta Net Zero Carbon Residence Hall retrofit project, 2 very high-profile projects and important to the state. This concludes my report.
Paul, thank you. Are there questions? Hearing none. I've had a chance to take a look at the procurement report. May I have a motion, please, to approve? Jerry, thank you very much. John, thank you for the second. All in favor, please indicate with aye.
Aye.
As there are no objections, the motion will be carried unanimously.
Thank you.
It is now time for us to, with your consent, go into an executive session. May I have a motion to go into executive session to discuss the financial credit history of particular corporations, proposed, pending, current litigation, and the employment history of particular persons or matters leading to the appointment, employment, promotion, discipline, suspension, dismissal, or removal of particular persons.
Motion.
Thank you very much, John. Is there a second? Adrian, thank you. All in favor, please indicate with aye.
Aye.
Aye. I think the motion. The record will show that we've just left an executive session during which no decisions were made other than to turn to the public session. Behind tab 9 are the construction projects report. Is the construction projects report. Steve.
Thank you. Behind tab 9 are the 3 construction division standard board reports. On the cover of the construction projects report dated April 2019 are before and after photos of Medgar Evers College's Carroll Street building exterior upgrade project. The budget for the project was $6.3 million. The scope was restoration of the building's main lobby entrance, as well as masonry work performed that included the removal and replacement of brick masonry and accessories and repointing of masonry at deteriorated mortar joint locations. The design consultant was Superstructures. This was a multi-phase project. This was one of many phases included in the project. The overall project design started in February 2012. The 3 phases design concluded in November of 2017. Our construction contractor was J&N Construction Group. They began construction in December of 2016 and concluded this past April. Some of the project challenges were the graffiti removal and recoating of exterior surfaces, as well as the repointing of the masonry joints, which was very labor intensive and took a majority of the project funding solely for that task. I got a couple of other pictures I'll send around if you're interested. On page 3 of the report are 2 new project additions. The first is an OMH Kingsborough PC project, $7.5 million interior renovations. I note this project because this is one of 7 recently received projects from OMH at Kingsborough's campus. These are projects that traditionally went to a different state agency but have come our way recently. In total, the 7 projects are over $20 million. And the second project is the Mid-Hudson $225 million new build of a forensic hospital on the Mid-Hudson campus, another OMH project. We competed for this project with other state agencies. We won the project and have begun pre-design services. It's anticipated to be a 250-bed new build. Site services are underway today, and we're advertising nationally for architects, given the type of project it is. There are few forensic hospitals in New York State. On page 10 of the report are the construction expenditures. Our prior year-to-date expenditures through April of 2018 were $56 million. Current year-to-date through April 2019 are $51 million. That's a decrease of $5 million. And on the project and program front, I'll start with SUNY. Gerard gave a couple of updates on the program. In addition, there's 4 capital projects that started last May. They're progressing towards substantial completion for fall occupancy of this year. We recently turned over a residential life space up at Plattsburgh in Whiteface Hall. We completed that this past Monday. The rest of Whiteface Hall is under renovation and should be complete in time for occupancy this fall. Other projects include Phase 2 of Mackenzie Hall at SUNY Alfred, Tower 3 at Buffalo State, and a project at BU. These are all gut renovation projects totaling over $86 million. There's 34 summer projects underway at following campuses: Albany, Alfred, Brockport, Buff State, Buff University, Delhi, Geneseo, New Paltz, Oneonta, and Purchase. The total project load is over $60 million in value. We're a third of the way through the summer schedule at this point, and we received word yesterday that one of the projects has completed already. So there's 3 new capital projects that we just started in May. Gerard mentioned Plattsburgh's Kent Hall. At Oneonta, we're doing a $20 million gut renovation of Huntington Hall and a $33.5 million new build out at SUNY Poly. All those projects are slated for completion in August of 2020. And lastly, we're closing out design on an upcoming CM at Risk project for SUNY Oswego.
It's the Fennell Hall rehabilitation. That project will begin construction in December of this year and conclude in April or in August of 2020. On the Javits Center front, the Transformer building continues to advance toward a September TCO under DASNY's permitting watch. Our Code Compliance Department is working with the owner and project team and has provided requirements for the TCO. On the expansion side, work continues on all fronts. Steel framing, concrete deck, the parking garage, site and MET utility work. This is a very, very active project site at this point, shooting for December of 2020. Substantial completion. Moynihan Station, the renovation of the Farley Post Office continues with heavy civil and structural activities, MEP system installation, vertical transportation systems, skylights, and annex work. This project is also moving forward toward a December 2020 substantial completion date. The South Beach Psych Center on Staten Island, the $275 million new hospital is advancing toward an October 2019 completion date. I toured the project last Thursday and met with our CM and GC, along with our designer and OMH. Work on all fronts is moving forward and finish work has begun. At FIT, the $189 million Feldman addition is now moving into a redesign phase following a value engineering exercise. After bids were received last year in excess of the project budget, the redesign should conclude in late 2019, with advertisement for bid packages expected in the first quarter of 2020. The Life Sciences Lab, as you know, we reissued the Life Sciences Lab RFQ on May 17th. Responses are due tomorrow. Following a review of the RFQ responses, we will request from shortlisted teams an RFP with a planned date of around July 3rd. On the NYCHA front, 76 of 78 security projects are now complete. All the original developments listed for appliance installation are complete. We received 6 new requests for 6 new developments that are in progress. And on the quality of life side, there's 11 projects complete. The balance of the exterior projects are in construction, and the remainder of the interior projects are either in design, completing design, or in construction. And lastly, on the GOZA front, projects continue to move out of design and into the bid and award phase. Recent bid results have not been favorable, forcing GOZA and the municipalities to decide on their project's direction. GOZA is moving some additional funding to a few of the projects that were over budget, while others will not be pursued at this time. DASNY continues to work toward a September 2022 program completion date. Outside of the projects, we're replacing our construction management system. Our selection committee and other interested DASNY staff participated in 4 product demonstrations in April. We've since performed a reference site visit to observe one of the projects in action by an end user. And next week, Kim and I and Ron Gassetti, who's heading up that effort, will be visiting with one of the vendors to talk about a number of topics. Next Monday, our Rochester field staff will move into their new office space located on Winton Place in Rochester. The space offers a larger floor plan, which will allow for all Rochester's staff to be housed in one location. And the per square foot cost is well below the New York City rate. Yes, it's nearly single digits. And lastly, our New York City new build and renovation PLAs were extended from December 2018 sunset date to September 2019. We've scheduled our first meeting with the New York City BCTC in July to work toward a new agreement. That concludes my report.
Thank you. Are there questions for Steve?
Steve, the CM, that's like a Procore or something, like a whole document management?
We use Contracts Manager, which used to be Primavera's product, which used to be somebody else's product. It's now Oracle's product. They're not supporting it anymore, so we can live with it unsupported, but probably
That's
a good idea.
right. So you're looking. the whole program. Yeah. There's some good stuff out there.
There is. We advertised. We got 11 responses. We shortlisted to 4. All 4 of the products we saw are, from a technology standpoint, well beyond what we're using today. So we're headed for a better place.
I go read the license agreements carefully, by the way.
Are there other questions for Steve? We're going to go on to Mike's report.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I have 2 items. One very briefly. In your package is the annual training deck for Project Sunlight. On the front of it is a short memorandum explaining the basics of the Project Sunlight requirements. And the essence of it is on page 2 of the memorandum is that if you have an event that's reportable within Project Sunlight, let Lucinda know in Gerard's office. Her email address is listed. And when you finish this review of this deck, please send an email to Diane Folletti so that she can mark you as complete on the training. In the interest of time, I'm not going to go through it here.
It's an annual training?
It's an annual training.
And you don't think it's changed substantially from last year?
No substantial changes. Second item in the legal report is a resolution to approve a project labor agreement, or PLA, for the Charles K. Post Addiction Treatment Center. This is located at the Pilgrim Psychiatric Center, which is in Brentwood, New York. DASNY has a PLA policy, and I'll walk through the requirements in chronological order so that we know what we're voting on. First and foremost, there are 4 things that have to be satisfied before we go forward with the PLA under our PLA policy. Number 1, the New York State Office of Alcoholism and Substance Abuse Services, or OASIS, has asked DASNY to manage this renovation project using a project labor agreement. So that satisfies the 3rd condition in our policy. It's not in chronological order. Second, DASNY has had a PLA impact analysis prepared by a qualified consultant in accordance with the New York State labor law to show or demonstrate that the inclusion of the requirement to sign the PLA would result in the lowest reasonable cost because of the size, complexity, and duration of the project. So that's an important aspect. Third thing that will happen is we make a recommendation, which we're making today, to the board, that the board authorize us to use a PLA for this project by enacting the resolution. Whereupon, last item will occur, Gerard will certify that all is in order and sign the contract documents. Important to note that the form of the PLA is exactly the form of our current New York City PLA. They adopted that form without any major modifications. Steve, do you have anything else to add?
Not really.
Are the hourly rates lower?
What was the question?
The hourly rates lower?
Can't.
Are the rates lower?
Prevailing, I think there's key to.
Well, the
The
rates,
prevailing wage
yeah,
based
the
upon
rates are what they are out in Long Island.
Got it, okay.
But the basis for
I
the,
just didn't understand. I thought he was saying it was the same. They were applying the city rates. I misunderstood what Mike was saying.
No, contract form.
I withdraw my.
The document is the same, so we did not engage in any protracted negotiations, and that the PLA terms are very similar to what we've already approved as a board for New York City, subject to those changes. With that, staff is recommending the PLA, and we request at this time that the board enact the resolution that's in the packet attached to the memorandum. Thank you.
Thank you. You've had a chance to take a look at Mike's report and the resolution. Are there any other questions? There being none, may I have a motion, please, to approve the resolution? Carol, thank you very much. Joan, thank you for the second. All in favor, please indicate with aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Kimberly, are you going to stand by or on the report in the board book, or are you going to do you have other things?
I have nothing to update now.
Okay. All right, well, thank you. Is there any other business then to come before this board? There being none, may I have a motion, please, to adjourn the meeting? Joan, thank you. John, thank you very much. Second. All in favor? Aye. Motion carries unanimously, and we are done.